everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Brian. I've got some pretty aggressive isolation here going on here. I think it'll be cut tomorrow for my big early February monthly video, but for now I'm rocking some messy hair, it looks like. Anyway, I am here today to give you a first impressions video on Dice Throne Season 1 ReRolled. So these first impressions videos are not full teach-in reviews, but I am going to go to the table and show you the game, how it works a little bit, just to give you enough of a feel if this is something that might be for you or something that appeals to you. And once we've done that, I'll come back here and I'll tell you what I think about it. Sound good? Awesome. So this here is Dice Throne Season 1 ReRolled. It's essentially a reprint of the first season, except that it's made by Roxley Games, and they incorporated two characters that were not in the first season when the season was put out by, I think it was called Mind Boggling Games. And originally it was done sort of a partnership with the designer and the artist, Nate Chatelier and Manny Tremblay. And it just took off. It was so successful that Roxley discovered it and decided to reprint it and bring it to a bigger audience. So this is essentially it's a battle chest. There's also a battle chest for Season 2, but Season 2 was done with Roxley already on board. So they kind of went back to Season 1. They collected everything into a battle chest. They added on the two new characters, the Treant and the Ninja, and you could get this as part of the Dice Throne Adventures Kickstarter campaign. So this is what this looks like. It looks very much like the Season 2 battle chest. It's in this box that's kind of looks like it's a big book. So it's really nice looking. Now if I take this off, you're going to see how all the different character trays slot in here. And there is this rule book here. Fits nicely in the middle. And I'm just going to show you, let's look at the Treant. Also, if I pull it up like this, you can see there's art showing where each character tray is supposed to slot in. So let's take a look at the Treant for this video. So all the characters come in very similar game trays. They'll have this protective lid. They have this kind of character mat that folds out like that. And you've got your little player card basically here. For the Treant, this is actually pretty good just to have down here. He has these tokens that you're going to be placing on his board to activate certain powers. His spirits. He works a little differently than the other characters. They don't have these kind of spirit tokens here, but he also has these. So all characters are going to have a health dial and a combat dial. The combat dial, I believe for most characters, is set to 4 at the start of a game. When you're playing just normal kind of one-on-one, that's what Dice Throne generally is. It's either one-on-one battles or kind of a battle royale free-for-all. But usually you're going to start your hit points at 50, and you can always heal up 10 above your starting health. So for the purposes of fighting with these characters against one another, you could go up as high as 60 through healing and things like that. I just have one card I'm going to leave in the box that has to do with Dice Throne Adventures, and I'm going to have another video coming out very, very shortly, a first impressions video on Dice Throne Adventures. So if you want to check that out, that should be up probably about the same time as this. And generally, you're going to just shuffle these up when you're playing, and you'll deal yourself 4 cards to start. You also have these very cool dice, and these dice are different for every single character. The iconography is character specific, and it relates to all of their different abilities. You'll do your upkeep phase, which allows you to resolve any kind of tokens that were left over from the previous turn. You'll do your income phase, which gains you a combat point and a card to your hand. Then you'll do the main phase, where you'll get to pay combat points to activate any of these cards. So for instance, I could spend 3 combat points to increase my defense and make it more powerful. So instead of rolling 3 dice, I will now be rolling 4, and I'll have kind of more abilities that I can trigger depending on what I roll. And here is one called Harvest, which allows you to remove up to 3 spirits. So this is very specific for the Treant, because the Treant uses these spirits as their primary token abilities. So remove up to 3 spirits and gain 1 combat point per spirit removed. So the spirits will do really cool things, but I guess if you have a lot of them and you play this card, you're going to get to notch up your combat points pretty significantly. And it says here, if at least 2 are removed, up to 2 chosen players gain a Wellspring. And the Wellspring is an ability over here where you get to heal half of a die that you roll during your main phase. So you just would roll a die, and whatever it comes up, you get to heal half that amount. If I had a lot of spirits over here, maybe I would pay 0 combat points to activate this. This will be something that I can activate, as you see on the side of the card, during the roll phase action. So whenever I'm rolling dice, I can do this to change the value of any one die. And some of these cards, instant action, so this will just happen immediately whenever I do it. Remove a status effect token from a chosen player. So I might get to either remove something negative from myself or something positive from another character. And then here's another roll phase one, which lets me change the value of any one of my dice to 6. So in general, these either activate during the main phase, during the roll phase, or like this one, this is an upgrade that will upgrade these abilities on your board. So I would do card actions, then I would do the offensive roll phase. So they'll take these dice, and this is always the same from character to character, but you'll take these dice, you'll roll all 5 dice, then you can re-roll any portion of these dice up to 2 times. So if I'd rolled these dice, let's say I did this, and maybe I was trying to get, this is always, the big ability here is always the player's kind of big ultimate ability. If this was Mortal Kombat, this would be their fatality. So if I was going to, try to get this, obviously I have no dice with any of these icons on it. So maybe for my second roll, I'd re-roll all of the dice, like so. And then I might say, well, there's no way I'm going to get this probably on a third roll. So what can I actually do with these dice? Right now, I have this. So I could just do this ability with these dice. But if for some reason, maybe I really wanted something else, like maybe I wanted one of these straights. Straights in the game tend to be pretty powerful abilities, and they work kind of like straights in poker. So you're looking for either a smaller straight, which would be a group of 4 numbers that kind of ascend, and the larger straight is all 5. So if I was trying to do a straight here, I have a 4, a 5, a 3, and a 1. So if I had a 2, that would be great. I'd have the large straight. So maybe for my third roll, I'd roll this and hope that I was going to get a 2. And I did. So then I would be able to trigger this ability. And again, you can roll these dice, any combination of these dice, up to a total of 3 times. So I would then be able to execute this ability. And for instance, as it says here, this ability allows you to deal 8 damage and roll 4 dice, and then add 1 more damage for every wood rolled. So if I had 8, I take 4 dice, I got 1, so I would do a total of 9 damage to my opponent. And then if I rolled any of these, which I guess on my last roll, I wasn't rolling that dice, I would have rolled 2 leaves, I would also gain Wellspring. And if I had any of these, which I do have 1, I'd be able to grow a spirit. So in addition to doing the 9 damage this turn, I'd also be able to gain a Wellspring. And I would be able to, I probably should have these off the board. This is generally, I just keep them in the token tray because it's great for that. And then when you get them, you can say, okay, I'm going to grow a spirit here. Then the other player would be able to respond to my offensive roll phase with their defensive roll phase. This is my defense that I have right now. You can see the base one's a little bit smaller. It's a roll of 3. Generally for defense, you don't get to do the re-rolling. You're just going to roll however many dice it says. So for a defense roll, I'd roll 3 dice, and then I get to do whatever I my roll came out to be. There's just generally not re-rolling on the defense. So for instance here, for the Treant's base defense, he will prevent a damage for every wood. So if someone was attacking me, I'd get to prevent 1 damage, and a damage for every one of these swirls, which is the 6. I don't have any of those, so I only would prevent 1 damage. But if I got 2 leaves, which I did, I would get to grow a spirit. Then I would have another opportunity to take actions. And whenever I'm taking actions, if it's before I do the offensive roll phase or after the defensive roll phase, if I don't like the cards in my hand, I can always just sell it to the discard pile and take a combat point. So if I'm really not liking the cards that are turning up in my hand, or they don't fit the situation, I can always cycle them through to gain more combat points. And in general, there's a 6-card hand limit, so you can't have more than 6 cards in your hand. If you do get more, you just need to discard back down. And that will happen at the very end of your turn in the discard phase. So if you are above your hand limit, you need to sell some cards for 1 combat point each to bring your hand limit down to 6. And that's the end of a player turn. And so I would do this, and then the other player would take their turn, back and forth until somebody has 0 health left. You can also play it as sort of a battle royale with multiple players. If you do that, then you will also be observing this targeting roll phase, and there'll be this phase kind of in between the offensive roll and the defensive roll where you determine who you are aiming your attack at. Now, the tokens are different for every character. I'm just going to go over them for the Treant, since this is probably one of the characters that people are less familiar with. But for this particular character, you have these spirits, and there's kind of an order between spirits. So this is kind of like your level 1 spirit, this is your level 2, and this is your level 3. And for this character, he has an ability here called Fertilize. So at the beginning of his upkeep phase, when he is getting his combat point and taking a card from his draw deck, he'll also get to grow a spirit. So if he has no spirits here, that means he'll gain 1 of these. If he has 1 of these, instead of gaining a spirit, he could mature the spirit into this. And if he has 1 of these, he could also choose to mature that spirit into this. And each of these tokens has different abilities. So with seedling spirits, the kind of first level one, and you see here there's a stack limit of 3, so I can have up to 3 of these at any one time. But I can spend this whenever I want to reroll any one of my dice. For these sapling spirits, which are kind of the level 2 spirits, whenever I spend them, I either get to heal a point and gain a combat point, or I get to draw a card from my draw deck and gain a combat point. And I can have up to 2 of these at any time. There's only 1 of these. I can only have 1 at any one time. And if I use that, I will spend this to do 3 damage, usually on top of something else that on top of my offensive roll. There's also a little note here that says if an opponent's attack would inflict a negative status effect upon you, if I had this, then I could spend this at the end of my offensive roll phase to prevent that incoming negative status effect. So these are all a little bit unique to the Treant, and then the Treant also has 2 other abilities which are very similar to the more general token abilities that other characters have. The barbed wire, basically, you would place this token on an opponent, and every time they did one of these, rerolls during their offensive roll phase to try to get better dice rolls, they would take a damage. The Treant then also has a Wellspring, which is a good effect, so the Treant's normally going to use that effect on himself, and that will allow him during his main phase, that's the part where he's spending combat points for card actions, he'll be able to roll 1 die and then heal for half of that. And in general, Dice Throne is kind of friendly, so usually it's a roll up. So half of 5 would be 2.5, which would round up to 3, so he would get to heal 3 hit points. When you do that with the Wellspring, you're basically spending the token so that it goes away. And this barbed wire token, if he puts it on somebody else and they do the thing where they're getting damage taken when they reroll, that will only happen for 1 turn, for 1 round. So it can do up to 2 damage to the other player if they reroll their die twice, but then at the end of that round, it'll go away. And all the characters have similar token abilities like this. They all have very distinctive decks that are specific to their dice and their different abilities. And then they'll all have 8 different kinds of abilities. Usually one of them is defense. Sometimes there's 2 different kinds of defense. Usually there's a small straight and a large straight. So you'll have 2 different kinds of straights. And then you'll have this big kind of, mega ultimate action. And you'll have usually some kind of, this is sort of a pure damage one. So this operates off of the lowest icons on the dice, which usually is a 1 to 3. So if you're just trying to do pure damage, you're going to be trying to roll a lot of 1s to 3s. And that's fairly consistent from character to character. For this particular character, though, you can see that you may discard 1 spirit to inflict a barbed vine. So it's just a little bonus thing that you get to do when you're doing this kind of damage stuff. And then you usually have a few spots here for some combination of the higher dice rolls, the 4s and the 5s and the 6s. So with the Treant, if they get this roll, they get to draw a card, grow 3 spirits. A chosen player gains a Wellspring, which is the healing ability, and a chosen player is inflicted with the Barbed Vine, which is the negative ability. So this is doing a lot of different things. Then over here on the Overgrowth, which is 2 wood and 3 leaves, you'll deal 2 damage, and you can remove up to 2 spirits from over here if you've accumulated them to add 4 damage per spirit removed. So if you did 2 spirits, that would be 10 damage. And you can also discard a Wellspring to make this attack undefendable, which means that other player wouldn't get to roll their defense. That would just hit. And of course, there's this odd little ability here, which just gives them the ability to create a spirit every turn. So all the characters are going to operate very similarly. They're all going to have these player boards with these different abilities that they can trigger based on their dice rolls. They're all going to have this deck of cards, and the deck of cards will include upgrades to these abilities. So as you're playing, you're going to get more powerful, and they all have different kinds of tokens that work differently. And essentially, Dice Throne is really just Yahtzee. You're just rolling dice, and you're trying to get different results and do damage. It's just a very simple battling game. What makes Dice Throne so fun and so genius and so brilliant partly is the beautiful design work. I mean, the art is great, and Dice Throne has done a fantastic job of just putting out some amazing components. I mean, they work really, really well. They're gorgeous to look at. The trays are just so well implemented, and their storage system is so kind of simple. But then the other thing is the gameplay itself and how they increase the complexity of the game just enough to make it interesting and have you doing different things. So you're going to be rolling your dice, you're going to be drawing cards, so there's deck construction involved. You'll be upgrading your player abilities. You'll be spending combat points on abilities that you can do instantly. Sometimes you'll be doing kind of more longer term planning, and then you'll be getting these tokens out to be doing various things. Okay, so let's talk about Dice Throne. Now, I'm generally a heavier gamer, so Dice Throne is not really my game, but oh, how it is. I actually think Dice Throne is fantastic and amazing, and I say that as somebody who is both a heavier gamer and who doesn't really like kind of one-on-one battling games. But Dice Throne handles this so well. Yeah, Dice Throne just comes in over a 2 on Board Game Geek, which means it's just going to edge into the medium-light range of game from the light games. So it's not a heavy game. There's not that much going on in the game. Essentially, it's Yahtzee, but it's Yahtzee with different kinds of characters and various player abilities. It does have a few systems going on simultaneously, and the combinations of those different systems, while none of them being complicated, is just enough to keep things really, really fun and really interesting and to keep the gameplay really compelling. It also gives you, between those 3 or 4 different systems, lots of different things that you can do, lots of different ways you can kind of play, whether you're focused on the dice or you're focused on the cards or you're focused on the tokens. And then on top of that, each character plays differently. The tokens, the icons, they really are different from character to character, not only in the way that they look, but the way that they play. So anytime you take a character and you play with it a little bit, you're going to start to understand like, oh, this character plays much more strongly if I do this. So maybe for one character, you're actually getting a lot of cards and you're incentivized to sell a lot, which floods you with combat points, but then you have to spend those combat points very specifically to kind of choose which cards you're going to focus on. So there could be a character that kind of cycles through the cards more quickly and allows you to do things. There could be characters that you're, much more focused on the dice. Obviously, with the Treant, which I showed you, you've got that whole spirit system going on, and that allows you to draw cards, heal, gain combat points, do more damage, and change your dice. So even within those little different spirit tokens, there are different ways you can kind of choose to spend those tokens and things you can supplement from those tokens. So for instance, one person might be just spending the little tiny tokens to be able to alter their dice constantly, whereas a different player might play the Treant and try to keep growing the spirits into the largest spirit and then using that to buff up their damage. So there are definitely ways to play each character that play to their strengths and kind of maximize what they do. But there are also a lot of variability baked into the characters and the gameplay in general to allow you a lot of choices and different things to do. And most of all, the game it's pretty and it's gorgeous and it's tactile and it's fun. It's so fun. And I say that again as somebody who doesn't like a lot of the kind of one-on-one conflict, battling games. But this kind of is just such the complete package between great design, great art and art design, and those wonderful game trays and everything, stored so intuitively to make the gameplay so easy. It's a joy to play on every level. So a little bit of history I feel like I should go into before I finish the video. Dice Throne originally began in, I think, 2018 when Nate Chatelier, who was the designer, and Manny Tremblay was the artist, created their own company called Mind Bottling Games. And they were essentially self-publishing these characters and 2-character sets. It was a good idea that I don't think that they anticipated would take off the way that it did. But it's easy to pick up, it's easy to teach, and it's so fun to play. And so take off it did. And Roxley found out about this and they decided to come in with them to publish season 2 as a battle chest. And then when they did Dice Throne Adventures, they went back and they added in a couple characters to the first season to bring it from 6 to 8. So they added in the Ninja and the Treant, and they republished it as the season 1 ReRolled. And in doing so, they were able to upgrade a lot of the stuff. They were able to, bring all of those season 1 characters that had been essentially self-published before to the same component and quality level of season 2. So there are no plans ever to do anything like that again. Roxley doesn't have a reason to. Everything is now of the same caliber. So it's not something, there are no plans for them to go back and do a ReRolled season 2, nor do they see any need to do that. But I think that's a question that should be answered, because I have heard people say, oh, they did a ReRolled season 1. Are they going to do a ReRolled season 2? Is it safe for me to get season 2, or is that going to change? Yes, it's safe for you to get season 2. Again, the only reason they did that with season 1 was to upgrade the components and everything in line with the characters that they were now publishing in season 2 and kind of make everything Dice Throne of the same piece. So now that that has been done, there will not be a need in the future for ReRolled editions. My opinion, I think I've made this fairly clear already, but this is a fun game. This is a really fun game, and I'd really recommend it to anyone. I think the only one who wouldn't enjoy it is someone who knows that they don't like this kind of simple Yahtzee styling battle. If you compare it to a game like King of Tokyo, it's got a lot more going on than King of Tokyo. I mean, a lot of people like King of Tokyo, and that's essentially just kind of a dice rolling battler. If you like King of Tokyo, there's no reason that you shouldn't like this. Because again, this remains simple, but it adds enough systems to give it kind of more strategy and more tactics and just be a lot more engaging and compelling and ultimately more fun. But it does it in such an intuitive, streamlined way that it's never brain burnery. It doesn't get into that level of kind of gameplay. It keeps it simple and fun while just offering you more options. So for me, this is just kind of an easy recommend to almost anyone, as long as the game falls inside their wheelhouse, I guess. And even for some people that don't, like myself, this isn't a game that I probably would have rushed out to buy. The only reason that I did get Dice Throne, both 1 and 2, was because of Dice Throne Adventures. I didn't think that my fiance and I, we don't play a lot of 1 versus 1 direct conflict games. She doesn't like that kind of gameplay, so we tend to stay away from it. And I knew that even though I enjoyed Dice Throne in general when I played it a couple of years back, I knew it probably wasn't something for me to purchase, just because it wasn't the kind of game I was going to play a lot at home. And even my gaming groups, we tend to gravitate more towards heavier kind of Euros. So I always knew it was the kind of game that I wouldn't say no to and I would enjoy when I played, but I didn't really see a reason for me to own it. Then Dice Throne Adventures came along and I figured, I know I'm going to have that. I know I'm going to be dungeon crawling. Let's just get everything and add in a lot of variability to Dice Throne Adventures. And I'm really glad I did. I love the characters. I love the artwork. I love the design. And it's a beautiful, well-executed game. So, this is this is a big recommendation for anyone out there thinking of Dice Throne and wondering if, where you should jump on. Honestly, the great thing is you can always just go out and buy one of those kind of 2-character packs and see how you like it. And then if you like it, you can get one of the battle chests. Maybe get the one that you didn't get the 2 characters from. Or eventually maybe you just sell the 2-character pack and replace it with a battle chest. But it's very easy to participate in Dice Throne in a way that works with your wallet. Whether that means, buying 2 characters and just playing with those for a long time, then eventually maybe buying a couple more, or just saying, you know what, I really like this. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to grab a battle chest. It's got 8 characters. It'll give me a lot of opportunities for variability and different player combinations. And again, Dice Throne is something that can be played one-on-one or as kind of a battle royale with any number of players. So there is even a lot of variability baked into how you can play it and the player count, which is fantastic. So high recommendation for this one. If you are new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I publish videos in the future, you can hit the alarm bell. There are going to be a bunch of these first impressions videos coming out for a while. I'm kind of ramping up through a backlog of them. So if you like this video, chances are you're going to like some of the stuff coming up in the next few weeks as well. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.